at her friend's engagement party. She leaned over and whispered, "That should have been us if you were richer." I just smiled. A year later, I walked into that same venue with a ring in my pocket for someone who actually believed in me. It had all started at an engagement party for my girlfriend's best friend, Jessica. The place was one of those extravagant old mansions people rent for events. Crystal chandeliers, tuxedoed waiters, champagne towers, the whole scene. Veronica, my girlfriend, was in her element. I, on the other hand, was just trying not to spill anything on a rented suit I could barely afford. I was a software developer at a small startup. The job paid decently, enough for a comfortable life, but not nearly enough for Veronica's idea of success. In the 3 years we'd been together, my modest salary had been a quiet, ever-present disappointment to her. She never said it outright, but I saw it in the sighs when we looked at homes online, and in the way she talked about her friends' European vacations like they were milestones I'd failed to reach. That night, Jessica proudly showed off her engagement ring, a massive diamond that probably cost more than my car. Veronica stared at it with open envy, eyes fixed like she was looking at something she deserved but had been denied. Later, as we stood by the bar, she leaned in close. Her perfume was so strong it almost drowned out her voice when she whispered, "That should have been us if you were richer." It wasn't a joke. She said it like a statement of fact. Simple, absolute, undeniable. 3 years of loyalty, of being there for her through every career shift, every bad day, every car breakdown at 2 a.m., all erased in a single breath. To her, it all came down to a number in my bank account, and mine wasn't big enough. I didn't argue. I didn't even frown. I just smiled, nodded, and let the words sink in like they belonged to someone else's story. Something inside me shut off completely. The part of me that had been trying to be the man she wanted just went silent. And in that crowded room filled with money, diamonds, and expectations, I felt something strange, peace. I was done. We drove home in silence that night. The next morning, I got up early, made a pot of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with 2 empty boxes beside me. When Veronica walked in yawning, she frowned. "What's with the boxes?" "You should start packing," I said quietly. She blinked. "Packing for what?" "You're moving out," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Last night you made it pretty clear that I can't give you the life you want, so I'm letting you go find it." She actually laughed. "Are you serious? You're breaking up with me over one little comment." "It wasn't a little comment, Veronica," I said. "It was your truth. You deserve the kind of life you're chasing. The rings, the parties, the money. That person just isn't me. So we're done." The look she gave me wasn't heartbreak. It was irritation, like I had just ruined her schedule. She wasn't sad. She was inconvenienced. I derailed her 5-year plan without asking permission. She moved out a week later into a small apartment her parents helped pay for. The breakup was surprisingly easy. We didn't share much. My name was on the lease, the car was mine, and we just divided the furniture and walked away. At first, it seemed clean. Then came the backlash. About a month later, Jessica posted a photo of the two of them with the caption, "Real friends stick by you when insecure men try to hold you back." It didn't take long to figure out who the insecure man was supposed to be. Veronica had clearly spun her version of events, painted me as a jealous, controlling ex who couldn't handle a woman with ambition and successful friends. A few mutual acquaintances bought into the story. I even got texts from people telling me I was a jerk for how I treated her. I didn't reply to any of them. I just went quiet. Instead of fighting her narrative online, I buried myself in work. The startup I joined was risky. Small team, uncertain future. But we were building a financial software platform we believed could change the industry. I'd taken a lower salary in exchange for stock options. Veronica used to call it my little computer project and told me I should get a real job with a stable paycheck. So I worked for 6 straight months. I practically lived at the office. 12, sometimes 15 hours a day. My social life vanished. The friends who sided with her drifted away. It was lonely, exhausting, but every time I felt like quitting, I remembered that whisper in the crowded mansion. If you were richer, then everything changed. A massive international bank bought out our startup. The deal was huge, and my stock options, the ones she laughed at, suddenly became worth a fortune. Not just buy a new car money, life-changing money. The kind of money that meant I'd never have to work again if I didn't want to. I didn't let it change me overnight. I stayed with the company through the acquisition as part of the transition. I bought a new truck, not a flashy sports car, just something reliable and nice. I kept my same apartment. Only my financial advisor knew the full scope of what I was worth. And then I met someone new. Her name was Hannah, a teacher at a local elementary school. We met at the dog park when my scruffy mutt decided to tackle her golden retriever. We started talking, and it was easy, natural. She didn't ask what I did for a living until our third date. When I told her I was a software developer, she just smiled and changed the subject to a book she was reading. Hannah was sharp, funny, and kind. She didn't care about wealth. She cared about who you were, not what you were. A year after I met Hannah, exactly 1 year to the day since Jessica's engagement party, I decided it was time. Step one was a venue. I called the events manager at that same old mansion where everything had started. I told her I wanted to reserve the entire estate for a private Saturday night event. When she asked what the occasion was, I said it was a surprise birthday party for my girlfriend. Then I paid the absurd fee without a second thought. Next came the guest list. I knew Veronica and Jessica were still inseparable. I also knew Jessica and her husband, Tom, still socialized with most of our old circle. So I got a little strategic. I reached out to Tom, a decent guy, the type who always got stuck in the middle of Jessica and Veronica's chaos. I told him I wanted to throw a huge, all-expenses-paid celebration for some old friends to make peace and move past old drama. Life's too short for grudges, I said. I invited him and Jessica and told him to extend the invite to everyone from our old friend group. And I knew if Jessica was invited, Veronica wouldn't be far behind. It was a perfect Trojan horse. When the night arrived, Hannah still had no clue what was really happening. She thought we were going to some fancy birthday dinner for one of my co-workers. When we pulled up to the mansion, she looked stunned. "This is for a colleague?" she asked, eyes wide. "He's a very successful colleague," I said with a small grin. We walked in and the place was packed. Familiar faces everywhere. Jessica and Tom, old friends who had vanished from my life when things fell apart. And by the bar, holding a glass of champagne, stood Veronica. She was with some slick-looking guy in an expensive suit. When she spotted me, her lips curved into that slow, smug smile I remembered too well. Her eyes flicked over me. My tailored but not extravagant suit, Hannah's simple yet elegant dress, and I could almost see the calculations behind her gaze. She thought she knew the script. They made their way toward us. Well, Veronica said, looking me up and down. "Look what the cat dragged in. Surprised you could afford the cover charge, Alex." Before I could respond, Jessica added with a smirk, "Be nice, V. He's trying. It's sweet that your new boss is letting you use his party to impress your girlfriend." I just smiled, something like that. For the next hour, I mingled. I talked to the same people who'd once bought into her version of things. I was polite, warm, unbothered. I didn't bring up the past. I let them keep believing their story, the one where I was the bitter ex and Veronica had moved on to something better. Then came the main event. The staff rolled out a towering cake, the lights dimmed, and I stepped up onto the small stage where the band had been playing. "Thank you all for coming," I said into the microphone. "I know this is a surprise for some of you. A year ago, I stood in this very room on what was a difficult night for me. A lot has changed since then. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Veronica, leaning toward Jessica, whispering something with that same smirk. I'm not much of a speech guy," I continued, "but I want to get everyone here tonight to celebrate a new chapter in my life, and to remind myself that a year can change everything." I turned toward Hannah, who looked both confused and glowing. "Hannah," I said, and my voice cracked slightly, "you came into my life when I was at my lowest. You didn't see a struggling man with a risky dream. You saw me. You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. You didn't care about how much money I had, or didn't have. You cared about the person I was. I walked down from the stage, took her hand, and dropped to one knee. Pulling a small velvet box from my pocket, I said softly, "This isn't a birthday party. This is for you." When I opened the box, the diamond inside caught the light, and the entire room gasped. It made Jessica's ring look like a pebble in comparison. "Hannah," I said, my voice shaking now, "will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears as she nodded, speechless. I slipped the ring onto her finger, and the crowd erupted in cheers. All around us, people were clapping and shouting congratulations, some of the same people who had once written me off. I stood, kissed my fiancée, and then looked across the room. Veronica was frozen. Her face had gone pale, her expression hollow. The man beside her, her new wealthy boyfriend, was staring at Hannah's ring, jaw slack. Jessica's eyes darted between us, realization dawning as the truth pieced itself together. Veronica understood. She knew this wasn't just a proposal. This entire evening, this mansion, this crowd, this moment, was the answer to the whisper she'd thrown at me a year ago. I had brought her back to the exact place where she'd measure my worth in dollars, just to show her how wrong she'd been. The rest of the night blurred into handshakes and congratulations. Tom came over, shook my hand firmly, and said with a grin, "Well played, man. Well played." Jessica and Veronica slipped out quietly. No goodbyes. The aftermath was quiet but brutal. Word spread that Veronica and her boyfriend had a huge fight on the drive home. Apparently, he was furious that she'd so badly misjudged who I'd become. Their relationship, built on the illusion of trading up, fell apart within a week. A few days later, Jessica sent me a long, rambling apology text. She said she hadn't realized how twisted Veronica's version of events had been, that she was sorry for how she'd treated me. I just replied, "Okay." 6 months later, Hannah and I were married. It was a small ceremony in the backyard of the house we'd bought together, a house I paid for in cash. The real revenge wasn't the money. It wasn't even the ring. It was a look on Veronica's face when she realized that the man she'd once dismissed as not rich enough had built a life far better, fuller, and more loving than she could ever imagine. She had measured my worth by the balance in my bank account. I showed her that a man's true value isn't something you can ever put a price on.